My husband abandoned me at our anniversary dinner, dragged his mistress into our bed, then asked me to leave so he could sort out his feelings. Can you imagine the pure, gut-wrenching horror of finding your husband in bed with another woman, not just anywhere, but in your own home on your first wedding anniversary? What I did next wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming every single piece of myself, even if it meant tearing our life apart. So, I married Kirk after dating for 2 years. He was this incredibly confident, funny guy I met at a work conference, and he just charmed me. Made me feel like I was the only woman in the room, you know? He proposed on a beach, and I swear I said yes before he even finished asking. Our wedding was small, but it was perfect. I honestly believed I'd found my person, my soulmate. I thought we were building a beautiful life together. Turns out, I thought a lot of things that were completely wrong. Kirk worked at an investment firm, made good money. I'm a physical therapist, and I make decent money. Together, we were comfortable. We bought a house in a nice neighborhood, talked about having kids someday, had our sacred Friday date nights and Sunday morning routines. For 11 glorious months, I genuinely believed I was happy. Then came our first anniversary. Kirk made reservations at the restaurant where we had our first date. He told me to dress up, said he wanted to celebrate properly. I spent hours getting ready, new dress, hair done, the works. I was buzzing with excitement, ready to mark 1 year with the man I loved. We got to the restaurant, ordered drinks, reminisced about our favorite memories from the year. Kirk held my hand across the table, looked me in the eyes, and told me he was lucky to have me. And I believed him. My God, I believed him. Then his phone rang. His whole face just changed. He said he needed to take it, stepped outside. I waited. 5 minutes stretched to 10. 10 turned into 20. I texted him, "Everything okay?" No response. I called. Voicemail. After 30 agonizing minutes, I paid for our drinks and walked outside, my heart sinking. His car was gone. He just left me at our anniversary dinner, without a word. I called him again, and this time he answered. He mumbled something about work, an emergency with his assistant, Brooke. He said I should take a cab home, and he'd explain later. I asked what kind of emergency required him to abandon his wife on our anniversary. He actually had the audacity to say I was overreacting. He'd be home soon, he promised. Then he hung up before I could even respond. So I took a cab home just like he said. His car was in the driveway. I walked in, expecting to find him in the living room, ready with some pathetic apology. Instead, I heard voices upstairs. My stomach dropped. Slowly, I walked up. Our bedroom door was closed. I pushed it open, and there he was, my husband, in our bed, with Brooke. They weren't even surprised to see me. Kirk just let out this sigh, like I was the inconvenience. He said, "This isn't how I wanted you to find out." Brooke, this woman, she pulled the sheets up and looked at me like I was the one interrupting. She actually had the nerve to ask if I could give them a minute. My blood ran cold. I stood there, trying to process what I was seeing. My husband, our bed, our anniversary. He didn't even have the decency to take her somewhere else. He brought her here, to our home, to the bed we shared. On the night we were supposed to be celebrating our first year together, I turned and walked back downstairs without a single word. A few minutes later, Kirk followed, wearing sweatpants and nothing else. He said we needed to talk. He calmly explained that he and Brooke had been together for a few months. He said it just happened, and he didn't mean for me to find out this way. He even added with a straight face that I was a great wife, but Brooke understood him in ways I couldn't. The audacity. Then came the real kicker. He wasn't sure what he wanted yet, but he needed time to figure it out. And then he asked me, if I could stay somewhere else for a few days while he sorted through his feelings. He actually asked me to leave my own home so he could decide if he wanted to keep cheating on me. And I said, okay. Just like that. Okay, I need to pack a bag and I'll go to my sister's. Kirk looked relieved. Relieved. He actually said he appreciated me being mature about this. He said most women would make this into a huge fight. He turned and went back upstairs to Brooke. While I stood in my kitchen, a cold, hard realization dawning on me about exactly who I had married. But I didn't go to my sister's that night. Oh no. I waited. I waited until Kirk and Brooke fell asleep, probably exhausted from all their sorting through feelings. Then I started packing. Not a small bag for a few days. I started packing everything. Every single thing I brought into that marriage. The furniture I'd bought before we met. The kitchen appliances my family gave us as gifts. The artwork my grandmother left me. The TV I paid for. The bedding from my old apartment that was in the guest room. I loaded my car with as much as I could fit. Then I called a 24-hour moving company. Paid extra for them to come immediately. By sunrise, that house was half empty. I watched the moving truck pull away as the sky started turning pink. The house looked wrong now. Hollow. Kirk's car sat in the driveway, exactly where he'd left it last night. I pictured him upstairs in our bed with Brooke. Both of them fast asleep, utterly clueless about what I had just done. The satisfaction that washed over me, it felt better than anything I'd experienced in months. I got in my car, boxes piled in the back seat, and drove away from that house for the last time. My sister, Alexandra, lived across town. I pulled into her parking lot just after 6 a.m. My hands were shaking when I knocked on her door. She opened it, still in her old pajamas and a college t-shirt, hair in a messy bun. She took one look at my face and just stepped aside, without a word. I walked in, dropped my purse on her couch. Her apartment smelled like coffee and laundry detergent. Safe. Normal. Everything my house wasn't anymore. Alexandra went to the kitchen and started making coffee. I sat at her small table and told her everything. The restaurant, Kirk leaving me, finding him with Brooke, him asking me to leave. And then how I packed up every single thing I owned, hired movers in the middle of the night, and emptied that house of everything that belonged to me. Alexandra listened without interrupting. She poured coffee into 2 mugs and set one in front of me. Then she just said, her voice firm, "Kirk deserved divorce papers and nothing else from you ever again." I finally crashed on Alexandra's couch around 7 a.m. My body felt heavy, tired in a way I'd never known before. The adrenaline from the night had worn off, leaving me empty. I slept hard, dreamlessly. When I woke up, it was dark outside again. My phone sat on the coffee table. 17 missed calls from Kirk. I picked it up, listened to his voicemail. He was screaming about the furniture, about how I had no right to take things from our house, about how I was being crazy and unreasonable. His voice was angry, confused, like he genuinely couldn't comprehend why I would do this to him. I scrolled through my text messages, dozens of them. The first ones were furious. "Where are you? What did you do with our stuff? Call me back right now." Then they shifted to confused. "Are you okay? I'm worried about you. Please just let me know you're safe." The last few were desperate. "We need to talk about this. I made a mistake, but we can fix it. Please don't throw away our marriage." I read every single one, and I felt absolutely nothing. Then I blocked his number. The relief hit me immediately. No more texts. No more calls. No more excuses. Alexandra helped me call my boss the next morning. I couldn't just disappear from my physical therapy clinic. I had patients scheduled weeks in advance. My boss answered on the second ring. I explained I had a family emergency, needed a few days off. She asked if everything was okay. I just said I was dealing with some personal issues and that Cody, my colleague, could cover my appointments. She was amazing. Told me to take all the time I needed, not to worry about work. 20 minutes later, Cody texted, confirming he had my schedule handled. I sat at Alexandra's kitchen table with a notebook and made a list. Find divorce attorney. Separate bank accounts. Change direct deposit. Get my name off house utilities. Cancel joint credit cards. Update my address. The list kept growing. Every item felt monumental, impossible. But Alexandra sat across from me, her own coffee in hand, and helped me break it all down. First, the bank. Then the attorney. Everything else can wait. She made it feel less scary, turning one massive problem into individual tasks I could actually complete. The bank opened at 9. I walked in, asked to speak with someone about separating a joint account. The representative was a woman in her 30s with kind eyes. She just listened. I explained I was getting divorced and needed my own account. She helped me open new checking and savings accounts, transferred my direct deposit. Then she helped me move money from the joint account Kirk and I shared. I took exactly half of our savings. I calculated what I'd contributed over the past year, plus half of what we'd saved together. It came out to almost $8,000. She processed everything, gave me new debit cards. The whole thing took less than an hour. My phone rang that afternoon. Alexandra's number. But she was sitting right next to me on the couch. I answered and it was Kirk. He was begging, pleading, asking to just talk for 5 minutes, asking where I was when I was coming home. Alexandra snatched the phone from my hand. "Kirk," she said, her voice deadly calm, "you will only communicate through lawyers from now on. If you contact her again, I will file harassment charges." Then she hung up on him, mid-sentence. She blocked his number on her phone too. We sat there in silence for a minute. Then she ordered pizza for dinner. Lara, my best friend since college, showed up that evening with bags of Chinese food and 2 bottles of wine. She hugged me hard when she walked in. The 3 of us sat in Alexandra's living room. Takeout containers spread across the coffee table. I told the whole story again, from the beginning. The anniversary dinner, finding Kirk with Brooke, packing up the house, everything. Lara listened, eating her lo mein straight from the container. When I finished, she just said, flatly, that she never liked Kirk anyway. Said he was too smooth, too fake. The way she said it made me laugh. It was the first time I'd laughed in 3 days. We finished both bottles of wine, and I fell asleep on the couch, feeling like maybe, just maybe, I could actually survive this. I woke up early and opened my laptop before Alexandra was up. I needed to find someone who could actually help me, not just take my money and be nice to Kirk. I typed divorce attorney into the search bar. Some lawyers looked too friendly in their pictures. Others had reviews saying they settled too easily. I needed someone tough. Someone who wouldn't just smile and nod when Kirk turned on his charm and made excuses. I read through pages of reviews. One name kept popping up in comments from other women who'd been cheated on. Juliet Howell. Her reviews said she was direct, didn't waste time. One woman wrote that Juliet made her ex-husband cry during the settlement meeting. Another said Juliet got her everything she deserved plus more. I called the number. A receptionist answered. I explained my situation. Husband cheated. I left. Need divorce. The receptionist said Juliet had an opening that afternoon at 2. I took it. Juliet's office was in a tall building downtown with marble floors and expensive art. The elevator smelled like leather and coffee. Her waiting room had fancy magazines, bottled water, a mini fridge. The receptionist told me to have a seat. Juliet would be with me soon. I sat on a leather couch that was nicer than any furniture I'd ever owned. 10 minutes later, the receptionist walked me back to an office with huge windows overlooking the city. Juliet stood up from behind a massive wooden desk. She looked about 50, with short gray hair and a sharp navy suit. She shook my hand with a firm grip, gestured to a chair across from her desk. I sat down. She picked up a yellow legal pad and a pen. Start from the beginning, she said. Tell me everything. So I did. I explained about the anniversary dinner, Kirk leaving me, finding him in our bed with Brooke, how he asked me to leave so he could sort his feelings. I explained packing up everything I owned, emptying half the house before dawn. Juliet wrote notes the entire time, without interrupting once. When I finished, she put down her pen and looked at me. "Kirk sounds like an entitled jerk," she said, her voice calm but firm, who thought he could have everything his way. "We're going to make him regret every single choice he made." Juliet explained that everything I took from the house was completely legal. The furniture I bought before we married? Mine. Gifts from my family? Mine. Things I paid for with my own money? Mine. Kirk couldn't claim I stole anything because none of it was his property. She said his affair gave us excellent grounds for divorce. In our state, adultery mattered for settlements. It meant I had a strong position in any negotiation. Kirk was the one who broke our marriage contract. That gave me leverage. She asked about our assets. The house, joint savings, Kirk's retirement account. She made notes. Did I have proof of the affair? I saw them together. He admitted it. "That's enough," she said. "Did I want counseling or mediation first?" "No," I said. "I want a divorce as fast as possible." She nodded. "We'll file the papers today." We spent the next hour going through paperwork. Juliet had forms already prepared. She filled in our names, the grounds for divorce, the marriage date. She listed adultery as the reason for dissolution. She wrote down that I was requesting an equal division of marital assets, splitting the value of the house, the savings, Kirk's retirement contributions during our marriage. Everything we built together would be divided fairly. She said the process server would deliver the papers to Kirk at his office tomorrow. I liked that idea. He humiliated me by bringing Brooke to our home. Now he'd get served divorce papers at work, where all his coworkers could see. Juliet signed the forms, made copies for me. Kirk would have 30 days to respond. Then we'd start negotiating the settlement. She told me to keep records of everything. All texts, emails, document any contact Kirk tried to make, write down dates and times. Everything could be useful later. I thanked her, wrote a check for her retainer fee. She walked me to the door, told me to call if Kirk tried anything stupid. I drove back to Alexandra's apartment, feeling lighter than I had in days. Having a plan made everything less scary. Juliet knew what she was doing. She wasn't going to let Kirk push me around. Alexandra was making lunch when I got back. "How was the meeting?" she asked. "Perfect," I told her. "We filed the papers already." Alexandra hugged me, said she was proud of me for taking action so quickly. She added that I could stay with her as long as I needed. I appreciated the offer, but I knew I couldn't live on her couch forever. I needed my own place, somewhere that was just mine. I pulled out my phone and started looking at apartment listings. One-bedroom places near my work. Most were expensive, more than I wanted to pay. But I had money from the joint account, and I'd get more from the house eventually. I could afford something decent if I was careful. I marked 3 apartments that looked good and had availability within the next month. I'd call them tomorrow and set up tours. Kirk got served at his office the next morning. I know because Juliet called me at 11 to say the process server confirmed delivery. She said Kirk looked shocked when he realized what the papers were. He tried to argue with the process server, but the guy just walked away. Within an hour, Juliet's phone rang. A lawyer named Hugh Kavanagh introduced himself as Kirk's attorney. Juliet put him on speaker so I could hear. Hugh said his client wanted to discuss the situation before things got contentious. Juliet, calm as ever, said there was nothing to discuss. Kirk committed adultery and I wanted a divorce. Hugh tried to suggest mediation. Juliet said no. Hugh asked if we could at least talk about the asset division before filing official requests. Juliet reminded him we'd already filed and Kirk had 30 days to respond. Hugh's voice got tight. He said this didn't have to be difficult. Juliet said Kirk made it difficult when he cheated on his wife. Then she hung up. She looked at me. "Hugh calling so fast is actually good news," she said. "It means Kirk is taking this seriously. That means we can negotiate instead of dragging everything through court for months." I went back to work 3 days after leaving Kirk. I couldn't hide at Alexandra's apartment forever. My patients needed me, and sitting around thinking about my failed marriage wasn't helping anyone. Cody had covered all my appointments perfectly. My schedule was completely up to date. My patients were happy to see me. Nobody asked about my personal life. They just wanted help with their pain and recovery. I spent the day doing what I was good at, helping a woman regain strength in her shoulder after surgery, teaching a man exercises for his bad knee, working with a teenager who hurt his back playing football. Focusing on other people's problems gave me a much-needed break from my own. By the end of the day, I felt almost normal. Cody stopped by my office before leaving. He asked if I was okay. I said I was managing. He said he was glad I was back, and if I ever needed to talk, he was around. I thanked him. It felt good to know I had people at work who cared. My phone rang while I was driving home. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered anyway. A woman's voice said my name and asked if I had a minute. I said yes. She told me her name was Miranda, Kirk's mother. My stomach dropped. Of course she'd get involved. Miranda said she'd heard about the divorce papers. Said Kirk was very upset. She wanted to talk to me woman to woman about giving him another chance. I asked what there was to talk about. She said all marriages go through rough patches. Kirk made a mistake, but he was a good man. She said I was being unreasonable by filing for divorce so quickly, that I should at least hear him out and try to work things through. Anger started building in my chest. I asked Miranda if Kirk had told her what happened. She said he explained that things got complicated with a coworker. I stopped her right there. I told Miranda that I found her son in bed with another woman on our first anniversary. I told her he brought his mistress to our home and then asked me to leave so he could decide if he wanted to keep cheating. I said if she thought that was just a rough patch, then she raised him to believe cheating was acceptable behavior. Miranda started talking about forgiveness. She brought up Christian values and marriage vows, said divorce was a sin and I should pray about my decision. I told her I was done praying for a man who didn't respect me. She kept talking, but I stopped listening. I told her I had nothing more to say to her or her son. Then I hung up mid-sentence. I pulled over and blocked her number. I should have done it sooner. Kirk's family wasn't my problem anymore. Juliet called 2 days later with Kirk's first settlement offer. She sounded amused, said Hugh had sent over a proposal, and I wasn't going to like it. She was right. Kirk wanted to keep the house, offering to buy out my share but over 10 years with no interest. He wanted to give me barely anything from his retirement account, maybe 20% of what he contributed during our marriage. And he claimed he should get the car I bought because his name was on the title, even though I paid for it. Juliet said the offer was insulting, and we'd be rejecting it immediately. She said Kirk was testing to see if I'd accept a bad deal just to get the divorce over with. I told her to tell Hugh that Kirk could take his offer and shove it. Juliet laughed, said she'd phrase it more professionally, but the message would be clear. I called Juliet the next morning and told her to send Kirk a counteroffer that actually made sense. We demanded half the equity in the house based on current market value. Half of everything he put into his retirement account during our marriage, and the car that I paid for. Juliet typed everything into her computer as we talked. She said she'd have the documents ready by the end of the day. She explained that Kirk's lawyer would probably come back with something in the middle because that's how negotiations work, but we needed to start from a strong position. I told her I didn't care how long it took, as long as I got what I deserved. She laughed and said that was exactly the right attitude for divorce negotiations. I spent my lunch break that afternoon looking at apartment listings on my phone between patient appointments. Most places near my clinic were either too expensive or looked like they hadn't been updated since the 80s. But I found a one-bedroom in a complex about 15 minutes from work that had availability starting next month. The rent was higher than I wanted, almost $200 more than I'd budgeted. But the pictures showed a gym and a pool, and the reviews mentioned good security. I called the leasing office and scheduled a tour for Saturday morning. The woman on the phone said they had 3 units available and they were going fast, so I shouldn't wait too long to decide. Saturday came, and the apartment looked even better in person than in the photos. It was on the 2nd floor with a balcony facing the pool. The kitchen had newer appliances, the bathroom recently renovated. I walked through the empty rooms, imagining where my furniture would go, and realized I didn't have enough stuff to fill the space. The leasing agent gave me paperwork. I signed everything, paid the application fee, then drove straight to Alexandra's to tell her I might have found a place. Laura came over that evening with her laptop, and we started looking at furniture online. I needed basically everything because most of what I'd taken from the house was still in storage and wouldn't fit the new apartment style. We scrolled through discount furniture sites and local marketplace listings for hours. Laura found a couch for $300 that looked barely used and a dining table someone was selling because they were moving out of state. I bookmarked everything I liked, made a list of what I absolutely needed versus what could wait. The total kept climbing, but I reminded myself that building a new life costs money, and I'd rather spend it on things I actually wanted than keep using Kirk's boring, neutral furniture. The leasing office called Monday afternoon to say my application was approved and I could move in on the 1st of next month. I paid the deposit and first month's rent over the phone, watching my savings account balance drop significantly. It felt scary and exciting at the same time, committing to this new chapter. I texted Laura about the couch and table, and she offered to help me pick everything up in her truck. Alexandra said she'd take a day off work to help me move when the time came. Tuesday started normal, with my usual morning patients. I was working with a woman on shoulder exercises when the receptionist knocked on my treatment room door. She looked uncomfortable, said there was someone in the waiting room asking for me. I told my patient I'd be right back and walked out to the front desk. The receptionist leaned close, whispered, "It's your husband. He seems upset." My stomach dropped, but I kept my face calm. I told her to inform Kirk that all communication goes through our attorneys, and if he didn't leave immediately, I'd call the police for trespassing. She nodded, walked back to the waiting room while I stood behind the desk, watching through the window. Kirk's voice got loud enough that I could hear him. He was saying something about how I wouldn't even talk to him, and this was ridiculous. The receptionist came back, looking shaken, and said he was refusing to leave. I picked up the desk phone and started dialing the non-emergency police line. Kirk must have seen me through the window because he finally turned and walked toward the exit, but not before knocking over a magazine rack on his way out. 2 of my coworkers had come out of their treatment rooms when they heard the noise. Cody asked if I was okay. "I'm fine," I said, my voice a little shaky. Just dealing with my soon-to-be ex-husband acting like a child. The rest of my appointments that day felt tense. I kept expecting Kirk to come back. Cody checked the parking lot during his lunch break. Kirk's car wasn't there. By the time my last patient left at 5 p.m., I was exhausted from the stress of looking over my shoulder all afternoon. Cody walked me to my car without me asking, scanning the parking lot the whole way. He waited until I was inside with the doors locked before heading to his own vehicle. I sat there for a minute, making sure Kirk wasn't waiting somewhere nearby, then drove to Alexandra's, taking a different route than usual, just in case. Juliet called me that evening. I told her about Kirk showing up at my work. She was quiet for a moment, then said we needed to file for a restraining order immediately. She explained that Kirk's workplace visit, combined with his pattern of trying to contact me through other people, showed a clear attempt to harass and intimidate me. I gave her all the details I could remember, including the names of my coworkers who witnessed his behavior. Juliet said she'd have the paperwork ready first thing in the morning, and we'd file it with the court by end of day. 3 days later, she called to say the judge granted a temporary restraining order, requiring Kirk to stay at least 500 feet away from me, my work, and Alexandra's apartment. The order would stay in effect until our divorce hearing, unless Kirk violated it, in which case he'd face criminal charges. Finally, Kirk's lawyer sent over a second settlement offer the following week. Juliet forwarded it to me with a note. Better, but still not fair. Kirk agreed to split the house equity 50-50, which was progress, but he wanted to pay it out over 5 years instead of refinancing or selling. That would mean I'd get monthly payments from him for the next 5 years, keeping me financially tied to him long after the divorce was final. He also offered 40% of his retirement contributions instead of the 50% we'd asked for. I read through the whole document twice, getting angrier each time I saw another condition designed to keep me connected to him. I called Juliet. "We are not accepting any deal that doesn't give me a clean break," I told her. "I don't want monthly payments from Kirk or any reason to stay in contact with him after the divorce is final." She agreed completely, said she'd send back a counteroffer rejecting the payment plan and holding firm on the 50-50 retirement split. I asked how long this could go on. She said it depended on how stubborn Kirk wanted to be. But eventually he'd realize we weren't backing down, and he'd have to accept reasonable terms or take his chances with a judge. Alexandra helped me pack up the rest of my belongings from the storage unit the weekend before my move-in date. We loaded boxes into her car and mine, making 3 trips to get everything to the new apartment. The movers I'd hired brought my furniture up to the 2nd floor, while we directed them where to put each piece. By late afternoon, all my stuff was inside, but the apartment looked empty and sparse. My couch sat alone against one wall. My bed frame was assembled, but I didn't have a headboard. The kitchen had my small table, but no chairs yet because the ones I'd found online wouldn't be delivered until next week. Alexandra stood in the middle of the living room. "It'll look better once you get the rest of your furniture and hang some pictures," she said. I knew she was right, but standing there, looking at how little I had, made me realize how much of my married life had been built on Kirk's money and Kirk's choices. Juliet called me the following Tuesday with news that made my blood pressure spike. During the discovery process, her team found out Kirk opened a credit card in both our names 6 months ago. He'd charged $15,000 on it for a vacation to Mexico. The statements showed charges at romantic restaurants and luxury hotels. Kirk had taken Brooke on an expensive trip, using credit that made me legally responsible for half the debt. Juliet said she was adding this to our counteroffer and demanding Kirk take full responsibility for the charges, since he incurred them through his affair. I asked how he could open a card in my name without me knowing. She explained that since we were married, he could add me as a joint account holder without my signature. I hung up, feeling sick, wondering how many other financial surprises might be waiting for me. I spent the next 2 days fuming about money I didn't even know he owed. Kirk used my name to take another woman on vacation while I sat at home thinking everything was fine. Hugh Kavanaugh pushed back hard when Juliet sent the updated demands. He claimed the Mexico charges were legitimate business expenses and Kirk shouldn't have to pay the whole amount. Juliet called me that afternoon, laughing at how ridiculous the argument was. She said she pulled the hotel receipts and restaurant bills from the credit card company. Every charge showed romantic dinners and luxury spa treatments, nothing that looked remotely like business. She sent copies to Hugh with a note asking him to explain which part of couples' massages counted as work-related. He got quiet after that, stopped defending the expenses. Juliet said we'd probably hear back with a better offer soon. I went to the grocery store on Saturday to stock up for the week. I was comparing prices on pasta when someone touched my arm. I turned and saw a woman I recognized from Kirk's office holiday party last year. She worked in accounting. Her name was Jennifer or Jessica. She apologized immediately, said she felt terrible about not telling me sooner. I asked what she meant. She looked uncomfortable. She explained that everyone at Kirk's office knew about him and Brooke. They'd been sneaking around for months. People saw them leaving together after work. She said nobody wanted to get involved in Kirk's personal life, so they all just pretended not to notice. I thanked her, my voice tight, and walked away before she could see how embarrassed I felt. Sitting in my car in that parking lot, I realized the humiliation went deeper than I thought. Kirk didn't just cheat on me. He made me look like an idiot in front of all his coworkers. They watched him parade around with Brooke while I showed up to office events as his devoted wife. They probably talked about me behind my back, feeling sorry for the clueless woman who didn't know her husband was sleeping with his assistant. I drove back to Alexandra's apartment and told her what happened. She said Kirk was the one who should be embarrassed, not me. But that didn't make me feel better about being the last person to know. Laura texted me on Sunday, asking if I wanted to get drinks. She was meeting some friends at a bar downtown and I should join them. I almost said no. I wasn't in the mood to be social, but Alexandra told me I needed to get out of the apartment. I met Laura, and she introduced me to 3 women she knew from her gym. 2 were divorced. 1 was going through a separation. They asked about my situation, and I gave them the short version about finding Kirk with Brooke. One woman, Rachel, told me her ex-husband cheated with someone from his gym and then tried to get custody of their dog in the divorce. Another said her ex drained their savings account before she could freeze it. They shared stories about terrible exes and starting over, and I felt less alone, hearing that other people survived this kind of pain. Laura bought another round, and we toasted to being better off without cheating husbands. I fell asleep on the couch that night, feeling a flicker of hope. I woke up Monday morning to an email from Kirk. My stomach dropped when I saw his name in my inbox. The message said he made a terrible mistake and Brooke meant nothing to him. He wrote that he loved me and wanted to fix our marriage. He suggested counseling, said he was willing to do whatever it took to earn back my trust. I read the whole thing twice, getting angrier each time. Kirk violated the restraining order by contacting me directly. He wasn't allowed to email, call, or approach me. I forwarded the message to Juliet without responding. She called me back within an hour and said she was reporting the violation to the court immediately. The judge reviewed the email that afternoon and extended the restraining order for another 6 months. Juliet said the judge warned Kirk that any future violations would result in jail time for contempt. She told me to keep saving any messages he sent, so we had documentation. I blocked Kirk's email address and felt relieved, knowing he'd face real consequences if he kept harassing me. Thinking about Kirk's desperate email made me understand something important. He wasn't sorry about hurting me or destroying our marriage. He was upset about facing consequences for his choices. Divorce was expensive and embarrassing for him. His coworkers knew about the affair and probably lost respect for him. Brooke wasn't around anymore to make him feel special. He wanted me back because his life got harder without me, not because he actually valued me or our relationship. The email wasn't an apology. It was Kirk trying to avoid dealing with the mess he created. Juliet called me 2 weeks later with news about a settlement offer. She sounded pleased when she told me Kirk's lawyer sent over terms that were actually reasonable this time. Kirk agreed to sell the house and split the proceeds equally. He would take full responsibility for the $15,000 credit card debt from the Mexico trip. The retirement accounts would be divided fairly based on contributions during our marriage. Juliet said this was the best offer we'd get without going to trial, and she recommended accepting it. I asked if this meant I'd be done with Kirk forever once the divorce was final. She confirmed that once we signed the settlement and the house sold, I wouldn't have any financial ties to him. I told her to accept the offer. I found out through mutual friends that Brooke broke up with Kirk. Apparently, it happened 2 weeks after I moved out, right around the time Kirk was served with divorce papers. One of Lara's friends knew someone who worked with Brooke, and the story made its way back to me. Brooke wasn't interested in being with Kirk once the affair became public and he lost his marriage. She liked the excitement of sneaking around and feeling like she was special enough to make a married man risk everything. Once Kirk was actually available and dealing with divorce, she lost interest and moved on to someone else. Kirk threw away our marriage for someone who never actually wanted him. Kirk's situation gave me a weird feeling that I can only describe as fair. He destroyed our marriage for someone who never really wanted him in the first place. Now he was alone, dealing with everything he caused while I built something new. Brooke left him the second things got real and public. She wanted the secret affair and the excitement, not the actual man. Kirk threw away what we had for a fantasy that disappeared the moment it became his reality. I spent my days at work helping patients recover from injuries, while Kirk probably spent his explaining to everyone why his marriage fell apart. My coworkers knew what happened, but they respected my privacy and never brought it up unless I did first. His coworkers all watched him cheat, and now they watched him lose everything because of it. The difference in how our lives were going felt like justice. Even though I never set out to punish him, he punished himself by making terrible choices and expecting no consequences. The real estate agent called me 3 weeks after we listed the house. She sounded excited. We had an offer for $10,000 above asking price. The buyers loved the neighborhood and wanted to close quickly. I told her to accept it immediately. Juliet handled all the paperwork on my end, so I never had to see or talk to Kirk about the sale. The closing happened on a Wednesday morning, and by that afternoon the money hit my account. My half of the equity came out to $68,000 after paying off the mortgage and closing costs. I stared at my bank account balance and realized I could furnish my entire apartment and still have money left over for savings. Kirk got the same amount, but he also had to find a new place to live since Brooke wasn't letting him move in with her. The agent mentioned he was looking at small apartments on the other side of town. Going from our nice house to a one-bedroom felt like exactly what he deserved. Juliet called me the next morning to schedule a meeting at her office. When I arrived, she had the settlement agreement printed and ready for signatures. She walked me through every page, explaining what each section meant. House sale proceeds split equally. Kirk took full responsibility for the $15,000 credit card debt from his Mexico trip. Retirement accounts divided based on contributions during our marriage. I kept my car, he kept his. No shared debts or assets after this. Juliet said once we both signed, the court would process the divorce and it would be official in 6 weeks. Kirk had already signed his copy that morning. She showed me his signature at the bottom of each page. Probably Hugh told him this was the best deal he would get, and fighting would only cost more in legal fees. I picked up the pen and signed my name next to his on every page. My hand didn't shake. I felt nothing but relief that this was almost over. Juliet made copies for my records and said she would file everything with the court that afternoon. 6 weeks, and I would be legally free from Kirk forever. I texted Alexandra and Laura, asking if they were free for dinner that night. Both said yes immediately. I made reservations at the restaurant where Kirk abandoned me on our anniversary. The same hostess who saw me sitting alone that night greeted me. I requested a different table than the one Kirk and I sat at. We got seated by the window with a view of the street. The waiter brought menus, and I ordered a bottle of expensive wine without looking at the price. When he poured our glasses, I raised mine. I signed the settlement papers today, I told them. Alexandra grabbed her glass. We need to toast. I thought for a second about what to say. Then I told them here's to new beginnings, and to leaving terrible men in the past where they belong. We clinked our glasses together, and Laura added that we should also toast to me for being strong enough to walk away. The wine tasted better than anything Kirk ever ordered. We spent 2 hours eating good food and laughing about how much better my life was now. The restaurant didn't hold any sad memories anymore. I took them back and made new ones. 2 days later, Alexandra called me while I was at work. She sounded angry and a little scared. Kirk had just showed up outside her apartment building. She saw him from her window, standing on the sidewalk, looking up at her unit. I told her to call the police immediately and report that he was violating the restraining order. She said she already dialed and they were on their way. I stayed on the phone with her until she saw the police car pull up. 2 officers got out and approached Kirk. Even from her window, She could see him trying to explain something. One officer made a phone call while the other stood with Kirk. After a few minutes, the first officer put Kirk in handcuffs and walked him to the police car. Alexandra watched them drive away with him in the back seat. She asked if I thought they would actually arrest him or just give him a warning. I told her the restraining order was clear, and showing up at her building counted as violating it. The police wouldn't just let him go. She sounded relieved when we hung up. Juliet called me an hour later, confirming Kirk had been arrested and was being held until his court appearance the next morning. She said the judge would not be happy about this violation. Juliet explained what the arrest meant. Kirk now had a criminal record for stalking because he violated a court order. This wasn't just a civil matter anymore. Any future employer or date who ran a background check would see he was arrested for violating a restraining order against his ex-wife. She said this would make it much harder for him to explain away his behavior. Women who looked him up before going out with him would find out he was a stalker. Companies that did thorough background checks might not want to hire someone with this kind of record. The violation was his own fault, but the consequences would follow him for years. I asked if this meant he would finally leave me alone. Juliet said the judge would likely extend the restraining order and warn Kirk that any future contact would result in jail time. She sounded satisfied when she told me Kirk made this so much worse for himself by not following the court's orders. I thanked her and went back to work feeling safer, knowing Kirk was facing real consequences. 6 weeks passed faster than I expected. I worked my regular schedule at the clinic, spent my free time settling into my apartment. On a Tuesday morning in early summer, my phone rang during my break between patients. Juliet's name showed on the screen. I answered, and she told me the judge signed the final divorce decree that morning. The waiting period ended. Everything was processed. I was officially divorced. She said she would mail me the certified copies for my records. I thanked her for everything she did. She said I made her job easy by being organized and reasonable. After we hung up, I sat in the break room, staring at the wall. The weight I'd been carrying since that anniversary dinner finally lifted. I wasn't Kirk's wife anymore. I was just me. I decided to take myself out to lunch to celebrate. There was a cafe 2 blocks from the clinic I'd always wanted to try but never had time for. I told the receptionist I was extending my lunch break and walked over. The cafe had small tables outside, and I picked one in the shade. I ordered an expensive coffee drink and a sandwich, brought a book I'd been trying to finish for months. Sitting alone at that table with my book and good coffee felt more peaceful than any lunch I'd ever had with Kirk. I didn't have to make conversation or worry about what he wanted to do next. I could just exist in my own space, enjoying my own company. The realization that I was completely comfortable being alone surprised me. For so long, I thought I needed someone else to feel whole. But right now, in this moment, I felt more complete than I had in my entire marriage. When I got back to the clinic, Cody was waiting near the front desk. He asked if I had a minute to talk. We stepped into an empty treatment room. He said he wanted to ask me something. He'd been thinking about it for a while, but wanted to wait until my divorce was final. He asked if I wanted to get drinks with him after work sometime, not as coworkers, but as a date. I looked at his face and realized he'd been interested in me for months. He never said anything while I was going through the divorce. He never pushed or made me uncomfortable. He just waited and respected what I was dealing with. I appreciated that more than he probably knew. But I also knew I wasn't ready to date anyone yet. I told him I needed more time before I could think about anything romantic. He nodded. I understand completely, he said. Cody just wanted me to know he was interested whenever I felt ready. No pressure, no expectations. If I wanted to go out in a few months or a year or never, that was fine. He just didn't want to miss his chance to tell me how he felt. I thanked him for being so respectful about it. Kirk never respected my boundaries or my feelings. Cody's approach showed me what I actually deserved from someone who wanted to be with me. I told him I would let him know when I was ready to date again. He smiled. That's all I needed to hear. We went back to work, and everything felt normal between us. No awkwardness or pressure. Just two people who understood each other and could wait for the right timing. Alexandra showed up at my apartment the next weekend with a bag full of hardware and a drill. "We need to make this place feel like yours," she said, "instead of just somewhere you're living temporarily." We spent hours hanging the artwork I'd kept in storage since before my marriage. My grandmother's watercolor paintings went up in the living room. The abstract prints I bought at a street fair years ago went in the hallway. Alexandra held each piece against the wall while I decided on placement, asking questions about where I got them, what they meant to me. Nobody asked me those kinds of questions when I lived with Kirk. He picked what went on our walls based on what matched the furniture. When we finished, Alexandra stepped back and looked around the apartment. "You seem different now," she said. "Happier, more relaxed than you ever were during your marriage." I realized she was right. The tension I'd carried in my shoulders for 11 months was gone. I wasn't constantly wondering if Kirk was happy or what mood he'd be in when he got home. I was just existing in my own space without worrying about anyone else. My apartment complex had a gym on the first floor that I walked past every day but never used. I decided to try the yoga class they offered on Tuesday and Thursday mornings before work. The instructor was a woman about my age who introduced herself and welcomed me. 3 other people were already there. I picked a spot in the back corner and tried to follow along. My body felt stiff and awkward at first, but by the end of the hour, I felt calmer than I had in weeks. After class, one of the other women asked if I lived in the building. We talked for a few minutes about our apartments, how long we'd been there. She invited me to join her and some neighbors for coffee sometime. I said yes without hesitating. Building a social life that had nothing to do with Kirk or our old married friends felt like reclaiming something I'd lost. These people didn't know me as Kirk's wife. They just knew me as the woman from apartment 3B who took yoga classes and drank coffee. Lara called me at work one afternoon and asked if I wanted to go to the beach with her and some friends for a long weekend. She said they rented a house right on the water and had an extra bedroom. I checked my schedule. I had enough vacation time saved up. Kirk always complained when I wanted to take trips. He said we needed to save our vacation days for important things like visiting his family or going to work conferences. But now, I could do whatever I wanted with my free time. I told Lara I was in and requested the days off from my boss. She approved it immediately and said I deserved a break after everything I'd been through. The beach weekend was exactly what I needed. We spent 3 days doing nothing but laying in the sun, swimming in the ocean, and eating good food. Nobody mentioned Kirk or my divorce. We just enjoyed being together without any drama or stress weighing us down. My boss called me into her office 2 weeks after I got back from the beach. I worried something was wrong or that I'd made a mistake with a patient. Instead, she told me the clinic was promoting me to senior physical therapist with a salary increase. She said my work during the past few months showed real character. Most people would have fallen apart dealing with a divorce, but I kept showing up and giving my patients excellent care. The clinic was lucky to have me on their team. The promotion came with a 15% raise and more responsibility for training new therapists. I thanked her, trying not to cry in her office. This job was mine. I earned it through my own hard work and dedication. Kirk had nothing to do with my success here. For the first time in my adult life, I had something that belonged completely to me. The extra money from my promotion meant I could afford things I couldn't before. My cousin lived in Seattle, and I'd been wanting to visit her for years. Kirk always said it was too expensive, or the timing wasn't right. Now I could book a trip without asking anyone's permission or worrying about someone else's schedule. I found a good deal on a flight and booked a hotel near my cousin's apartment. The freedom of making that decision on my own felt amazing. I didn't have to negotiate or compromise or explain why I wanted to go. I just decided and did it. That's what my life was now. Making choices based on what I wanted instead of what someone else would allow. 6 months after my divorce became final, I stopped at a coffee shop near my apartment to grab a drink before running errands. I was waiting for my order when I saw Kirk, sitting at a table by the window. He looked terrible. His hair was too long, and he had bags under his eyes. His clothes looked wrinkled, like he'd slept in them. He saw me at the same moment, and his face changed. He stood up and walked over before I could leave. He said my name, asked how I was doing. I told him I had nothing to say to him. He started apologizing again, saying he made a mistake, and threw away the best thing in his life. I picked up my coffee and walked toward the door. Kirk followed me outside, still talking. He said he missed me, wanted another chance. I turned around and looked at him. This was the man who abandoned me at our anniversary dinner. The man who brought another woman to our bed and asked me to leave so he could figure out his feelings. The man who tried to cheat me in our divorce settlement. I told him I didn't care what he wanted or what he missed. He made his choices, and now he had to live with them. Then I walked away without looking back. My hands shook a little as I got in my car, but I felt good. Strong. Like I finally understood my own worth. Alexandra decided to throw me a divorce party to celebrate 1 year since I left Kirk. She invited all my friends to her apartment, decorated with balloons and a banner that said, "Congratulations." Everyone brought food and drinks, and we spent the evening laughing about how much better my life was now. Laura made a toast about how leaving Kirk was the best decision I ever made. My yoga instructor friend talked about how confident I seemed compared to when I first joined the class. My coworker from the clinic said I smiled more at work than I used to. Alexandra showed everyone the before and after photos of my apartment to demonstrate how much I'd changed. In the before, pictures from right after I moved in, the place looked empty and sad. In the recent photos, it looked like a real home, filled with things I loved. Everyone agreed that Kirk did me a favor by showing his true colors early. Better to find out after 1 year than after 10 years and kids. I looked around at all these people who supported me through the worst time of my life. They celebrated my strength instead of pitying my situation. This was what real friendship looked like. This was what I deserved. Cody asked me again if I wanted to get dinner with him. 6 months had passed since he first asked, and I told him I needed time. Now I felt ready to try dating again. We went to a restaurant downtown that had outdoor seating and good wine. Cody was easy to talk to, genuinely interested in hearing about my life. We talked about our work, our favorite patients, places we wanted to travel. He asked about my interests, hobbies, what I did for fun. Not once did he bring up Kirk or my divorce or anything negative from my past. He just wanted to get to know me as I was now. When dinner ended, he walked me to my car and asked if he could see me again. I said yes. He leaned in for a goodnight kiss that was sweet and respectful. No pressure for more. No expectations that I owed him anything because he bought dinner. Just a simple kiss that felt right. Cody and I started seeing each other regularly after that first date. We took things slow, built a relationship based on actually knowing each other. He was patient with my trust issues, never pushed me to move faster than I was ready for. We went to movies, tried new restaurants, took walks in the park. He met Alexandra and Laura and got along great with both of them. They approved of him, which mattered to me after Kirk. Cody showed me what healthy communication looked like. When something bothered him, he talked about it calmly instead of shutting down or lashing out. When I had a bad day, he listened without trying to fix everything or make it about him. He respected my boundaries and never made me feel guilty for having them. Dating Cody taught me that relationships didn't have to be hard work all the time. With the right person, things could be easy and comfortable and good. I sat on my apartment balcony early one Sunday morning with coffee and the book I'd been reading. The sun was just coming up and the air was cool and quiet. I looked out at the view of the parking lot and the trees beyond it. This wasn't a fancy place or a big house in a nice neighborhood, but it was mine. Everything in it belonged to me. Every decision about how to decorate, or what to buy, or how to spend my time was mine alone. Kirk's betrayal nearly destroyed me that night I found him with Brooke. I thought my life was over, that I'd never recover from that kind of pain. But walking away from that marriage gave me back something more important than a husband, or a house, or a shared future. It gave me back my self-respect. It taught me I was strong enough to leave when someone treated me badly. Strong enough to build a new life from nothing. Strong enough to be happy on my own terms, instead of trying to make someone else happy. I was genuinely content for the first time in years. Not because I had everything figured out or because my life was perfect, but because I finally understood that I didn't need anyone else to make me whole. Have you ever faced a betrayal that forced you to completely redefine your life? How did you reclaim your power and build something new? Let me know your thoughts and stories in the comments below.